So we're blessed with more civility from the semi-doctus educator of thought. The thoughts that are now hot off the presses relate, let's say, to David Hume and to something which happened far beyond Hume, which is the explosion in the investigation by the most serious thinkers into language and how the moderns can think language over and against the ancient phusis nomos battle. So in the ancient version, nomos is of course aligned with the human being, and nomos has to do with chiefly money and laws. These are things that are supposed that a tyrant can order changed. So the will of the human being can order them changed. And then, since they're set off against the, as it were, new birth of conception of phusis, or growth, which has been a concept consciously molded by conscious investigators of the cosmos or of their own surrounding world or of their own thoughts or of their own nomos, perhaps. That's how that debate begins, but since we have people like Herder, of course, and people like Leibniz also did some work on language, and since maybe the most important political fact was the discovery of the so-called Indo-Germanic or Indo-European languages, and the study of that leading to the theory of the Aryans and their Aryan language on the one side, and the Semites and the Semite languages being different, and these two in I think the anthropologist, the early British anthropologist, is called Lewis. Starts with the M. I can't think of it, but Morris, maybe. No, that's the painter. But I can't think of it. But he theorized this, not just theorized, but wrote about this issue with these two large bands that first developed large agriculture in Europe and in Eastern Europe. Aryans and I guess the I guess Eastern Europe is wrong. But in any case, the first bands that independently did large, I guess agriculture isn't the key, but raising animals and building up a civilization where it was useful, where you had a surplus, and where therefore it was useful to keep servants of some kind, servants who didn't do work that was directly for sustenance or directly for agriculture. So the first two European civilization blocks are blocks which became European. Sorry about that, it's kind of a confused part of it. But in any case, these theories, of course, led to various strong political consequences, so far as they were part of the fuel for nationalist movements in contradistinction to monarchies. So in other words, that you had state socialism under Wilhelm I, under the Hohenzollerns, under Bismarck, but that the Nazis promised something new, not Hohenzollern socialism anymore, but the National Socialism, in other words, socialism for the German vote. Dem Deutschvolk. So, under those conditions, of course, language becomes a question of how you define what a nation is, or who the people that belong together, according to this notion that actually Hitler was trying to lay out, were all the German-speaking nations, and therefore you go into the Sudetenland, and then you say also, oh well, around Prague there's still some German speakers there too, so that justifies conquering the whole of the former what is this called, Czechoslovakia, and so in other words, those are powerful notions affected around the language problem. But that's how it stands politically. But when we look at language closely as a phenomena, especially around the way knowledge is supposed to happen, then we eventually must, as Bertrand Russell had to, as all the logical positives so-called had to realize, the so-called logic can't be happening outside nature. So then you have to ask, if there is no nomos phusis dispute, because nothing can be outside nature, then you've got a big problem opens up there, right? Then basic questions about how some words can signal some objects, what the relation between words and objects is, comes in. And I was thinking specifically in connection to this as a sort of semi-palpable analogy on these problems, and also, in fact, identical to these problems in some way. In Hume, when he's talking about a range of colors, of various, say the yellow spectrum, only yellows, but of various brilliance, and we naturally, as it were, we somehow are able to, at least those of us with a sensitivity to that part of the color spectrum, can order them in a certain way that it makes sense. You could say in the crudest ordering, just from lighter ones to darker ones. Say we have already this faculty to lay out our experiences immediately in a way that seems to make a natural order. So then on top of that, if you think of that problem floating there, the different yellows, but somehow we naturally know how to order them, which is mysterious. Then Hume says, what if one of them were missing? Could we simply, through our, in Kantian sense, this a priori synthetic ability to order colors, could we generate the missing color as though to generate an experience out from within ourselves rather than through having the experience? Those, I think, posit, just thinking about the region where those questions is happening, if you, as it were, look at that closely, and then you try to superimpose a natural view on it and say, how is the causality happening here? What's pushing what around? And so on and so forth. I think that brings us close to this kind of difficulty, which we can settle partly through Heidegger, through what is the proper mode of approach in order to deal with this problem of the nomos phusis problem, become the realization that there can't be anything floating outside of nature. But of course, as soon as you remove the last point, the last leverage point from off the Earth, from outside the universe, the nature concept also must dissolve into the pan-oceanic see, and it must be taken up then with the new awareness, which tries to break that before the simply necessary and spontaneous power of the phusis nomos distinction as it becomes more and more credible to enter it through the question of language, which then, again, we can walk back into daily dealings and see how that's fueling actually existing political passions and parties and geopolitical oppositions.